This is what most people see when they picture Eastern Europe: a gray, lifeless concrete block, cold, depressing, and seemingly erased by time. But what if we added a little life to it? A splash of green, the aroma of dinner drifting from an open window as neighbors laugh and share stories. Maybe it's not so bad after all. What if I told you these so-called commie blocks might be the most misunderstood housing solution of the 20th century? Not only did they give millions a roof over their heads, but they might just hold the answer to today's global housing crisis. Today, Eastern European panel buildings are often viewed through a distorted lens, both literally and culturally. Photos on social media exaggerate their decay. Slavic hardbass videos turn them into memes. Even many locals, especially younger generations, express embarrassment about them. Sure, they lack charm aesthetically, but that's another story entirely when we speak about functionality. Before these concrete towers filled Eastern European skylines, the region was stuck in what could only be called pre-modern poverty. In rural areas, most people lived in wooden huts with dirt floors, no plumbing and no electricity. Entire families, sometimes spanning 3 generations, shared 1 or 2 rooms. In the cities, apartments were overcrowded and unsanitary. Running water and bathrooms were rare, and shared toilets and coal heating were the norm. This was the everyday reality in countries like Romania, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, and the Soviet Union, well into the 1950s. Meanwhile, the West was rebuilding from World War II with the help of the Marshall Plan. Billions of dollars flowed into France, West Germany, Italy, and beyond. Modern housing and industry flourished, thanks largely to American capital. The East, however, received nothing. They had to rebuild from zero on their own. World War II hit Eastern Europe like a hammer. Cities such as Warsaw, Leningrad, Minsk, and Stalingrad were reduced to rubble. The numbers are staggering. Over 25 million homeless across the Soviet Union alone. Over 1,700 cities and towns were partially or completely destroyed. No international aid, no loans, no help from the outside world. In this vacuum, the newly formed socialist governments had no choice but to rebuild, quickly, affordably, and at scale. Their solution was prefabricated housing blocks made from standardized concrete panels. Factories were built to mass-produce these slabs, which were then shipped and assembled like giant Lego bricks. Each building could be completed in weeks, not months. Each apartment is basic, but modern. This was the dawn of the commie block. These buildings weren't just shelters. They were a political promise. Every citizen deserves a home. And suddenly, millions who had grown up without bathrooms now had hot water. Those who had cooked over fires now had kitchens. Those who had shared beds now had bedrooms. Unlike Western developments that chased profit per square meter, commie blocks were designed around a social good. Urban planners didn't just build towers, they designed entire neighborhoods called micro-rayons or micro-districts. Each one included schools and kindergartens, health clinics, grocery stores, libraries and post offices, parks, trees, and open space, reliable and cheap public transport. You didn't just get an apartment, you got a neighborhood. In fact, long before urban planners started talking about 15-minute cities, these neighborhoods were already putting that idea into practice. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman said there are 4 ways to spend money. First, your money on yourself. You care about both price and quality. Second, your money on others. You care about price, but less about the quality. Third, other people's money on you. You care about the quality, not the price. And fourth, other people's money on others. You care about neither price nor quality. And that fourth one, that's where things tend to go wrong. You see, many of these buildings, these commie blocks, were designed, funded, and constructed under this fourth category. Government committees spending other people's money on other people. That meant massive scale, but also corner cutting, indifference, and a lot of compromises. For a while, it worked. The mission was clear: give everyone a home, fast. And that's exactly what they did. But speed came with a cost. There was no time for individuality, no space for creativity. Durability often came second, and aesthetics was not even on the blueprint. The insulation was thin and poorly sealed, barely held off the bitter Eastern European winters. In summer, the sun baked the concrete walls until entire apartments felt like ovens. Ventilation was minimal, and air conditioning was a luxury never imagined. The walls were paper thin. You could hear your neighbors as privacy wasn't part of the blueprint. Many buildings had only one elevator, or sometimes none at all. When that elevator broke down, residents had to climb 9, sometimes 12 flights of stairs. They did this while lugging groceries, pushing strollers, or even with sore knees. Roofs leaked, paint peeled, pipes froze and burst, but maintenance crews did what they could because at that time, the state kinda cared. Regular inspections took place. Funds were allocated. It wasn't ideal, but it worked. Then, in the 1990s, it all collapsed. The fall of socialism wasn't just political, it was infrastructural. The government abandoned its role, quickly and completely. Local governments were left with massive housing stock, but no money to maintain it. Budgets disappeared overnight, utility networks were sold off, and responsibility slipped away. No one came to repair the heating, no one repainted the walls, no one replaced the missing windows. And so, people learned to live in decay. And slowly, the world began to forget what these buildings once meant. What was once a symbol of stability, security, and dignity became a symbol of failure. It wasn't the concrete that failed, it was the system that walked away from it. Even today, across Central and Eastern Europe, many of these buildings still serve their purpose. They house families, pensioners, students, and new generations. They remain functional, lived in, and in some cases, loved. What makes them remarkable is their endurance. Many of these buildings were constructed in the 1960s and 70s, and yet they continue to stand. In cities like Bratislava, Krakow, Vilnius, and East Berlin, some were given a second life, renovated, insulated, repainted, and integrated with modern infrastructure. They were not demolished, they were renewed. Across the United States and Western Europe, it's now common to see massive luxury apartment towers sitting completely empty, not because there's no demand for housing, but because these buildings weren't built for people. They were built as assets, not as communities. In an era where affordable housing is vanishing and homelessness is rising even in the wealthiest countries on earth, these buildings represent something that modern housing markets often forget: functionality over profit. And at the same time, across those same cities, rents rise, homelessness spreads, and younger generations find themselves priced out of the neighborhoods they grew up in. In a world where millions remain unhoused, and where profit-driven housing systems routinely fail to meet basic human needs, the legacy of the commie block offers an uncomfortable but necessary lesson. Sometimes the most criticized solutions were the ones that actually worked.